My brethren, according to the scripture, the Savior said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Hey, Rabbi.
Is that what Muslims call zakat?
We are here for a purpose, sir.
What purpose?
Demand
what? For what?
for your tax for last year.
Tax for last year. Hold on. When I was not making profit, there was no demand notice.
Osi, thank you very much for settling the issue. Mr. Chairman, what you are doing is tax evasion. It is wrong of you not to obey your civic responsibility. The tax officials are right. They are expected to serve you with the assessment notice at the end of the day. You don't need to get mad. Emila oni yasi, Emila oni yasi, ba ti feri, be no lori, Emila oni, aye labowo.
You see, we'll tell you our story. You see, we are celebrating the government, our leaders in Ayelabowo. We are celebrating our revenue service for making judicious use of the revenue generated. You see, the people in Ayelabowo now, they breathe taxation. We see development around Ayelabowo, infrastructural development, educational development, human and capital development.
We can make Nigeria great, great, great. We can make Nigeria great. We can make Nigeria great, great, great. When we pay our tax.
Sights and sounds for you there from the hospitality night that heralded the 19th Annual Tax Conference, which was held in ABEOKUTA, capital city of Ogun State, from Wednesday the 17th to Saturday the 20th of May 2017. In the wisdom of the organizers of the conference, it was thought best that participants should relax from the rigors of their long journeys from various parts of Nigeria into ABEOKUTA and begin the conference on a jolly note. Welcome once again. On today's episode of Tax Matters, our main story is the story of the 19th Annual Tax Conference, which this year was held in ABEOKUTA, capital of Ogun State, where the state governor, Senator Ibikule Amosun, was on hand to welcome participants.
I would like to welcome His Excellency, Senator Ibikule Amosun, CON, the performing Chief Executive of Ogun State. No doubt, Your Excellency, your presence here today has surely added glamour to this event.
Turning to participants, Mrs. Disu had this to say.
Permit me to recognize and welcome our brothers and sisters from professional institutes within and outside West Africa to this event. Your association with us over the past years is commendable, and we appreciate you.
Before Governor Amosun mounted the podium, President and Chairman in Council of the CITN, Dr. Mrs. Teju Shomori, had the floor and had this to say.
I'm happy to note with pride that Ogun State, with its impressive performance, has been positioned the third highest in internally generated revenue among the 36 states. Ogun State recorded 34.5 billion in 2015, making it the fourth state in good performance for 2015. This is an increase of 17.9 billion on the 17.4 billion it generated in 2014. Again, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in 2016, Ogun State retained its third position, having scored a total revenue of 72.98 billion in 2016. Your Excellency, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, it is gratifying to note that this conference continues to live up to its billing as a single largest gathering of tax professionals locally and internationally year on year.
On the theme of the 19th Annual Task Conference,
it is acceptable that taxation is about good governance. Therefore, the theme of this year's conference again is taxation and governance, the social contract imperatives. At this juncture, it is my great pleasure to respectfully invite a special guest of honor, His Excellency Senator Ibikule Amosun, a distinguished fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, to come and declare open our 19th Annual Tax Conference.
The theme of this year's conference, taxation and governance, the social contract imperatives, would not have been more apt. This is because it is coming at a time when the nation is seeking ways to boost its revenue base so as to come out of the present economic downturn confronting our dear country. Without doubt, the gradual fall in the price of crude oil at the international market and the instability in our foreign exchange earnings have both impacted negatively on the revenue base of our nation and by extension all the 36 states of the Federation. These and many other unforeseen challenges have led the general public and the economic experts to champion the call for the exploration of other income-generating avenues through which the government at various levels will fund their development programs. One area that the government has beamed their searchlights on is the revenue from tax. Without doubt, taxation is a key component in the running of government.
On the imperatives of citizens paying taxes,
for me, it is so important that we all do everything within our power to create more awareness for our people to see that it will be in their interest to pay taxes. Because without it, we cannot do any development. Indeed, I stand to be corrected. I don't think taxation contributes more than maybe even 10% into our GDP. Whereas in other nations, you will see the percentages, maybe 30, maybe even some 40. And if people don't pay their taxes, for me, they do not have the moral right to even challenge government when they are not performing. Because governments are no magicians. They can't give what they don't have. Once everybody pays their taxes, they will be in a position to even challenge the government and say, what are you doing with our money? If we want government to perform, we must do our bit. And once we do our bit, I can assure you that government will do their bit.
if we want government to perform, we must do our bit. That set the tone for the technical session of the 19th Annual Task Conference for the paper presentation sessions, which essentially centered around the theme of the conference, taxation and good governance, the social contract imperatives. But before we serve you excerpts from the paper presentations, first we want you to listen to this intervention by the special advisor to the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. ABEOKUTA.
The executive chairman is ever ready and willing anytime to be in any room or indeed any fora where taxation is a subject matter of discussion. As we find ourselves, the economic atmosphere of Nigeria now is such that it leaves us with no option but to focus on taxation. And so therefore, any opportunity to discuss the progress of taxation is highly welcome. Why do we need to focus on taxation? Exploitation and the sales of our natural resources, of course, has failed us. Somebody said, it's not that we left oil, it's oil that moved away from us. Why? We have no control over the prices of this commodity, and increasingly also, we've lost control over even the production volume. This is anticipated and is becoming a reality now. So we don't have any choice but to continually engage ourselves and discuss about how we can improve on the collection of taxation. Taxation, in our view, in FRS, and I want to believe across board here, appears to be the only sustainable way of generating revenue to fund developmental projects of the three tiers of government. We all know that the revenue that we collect are shared between the federal, the state, and even indeed the local government. So we need to focus on this revenue collection so that we can, like the governor and those who have spoken earlier said, so that we can indeed be able to fund the Nigerian of our dream. Therefore, as stakeholders in this practice of taxation in Nigeria, it is our duty, every one of us here present, to ensure that we do all that we could to ensure that voluntary compliance of taxation becomes the order of the day in Nigeria. On our part, we are doing a few things in FRS. We have what is called FEET, Federal Engagement and Enlightenment Tax Team. The acronym is FEET, and they are constantly on their feet. What they do is to go about there telling Nigerians the need for them to pay their taxes. And that when they pay their taxes, that is when we can get the development that we've been talking about. Of course, it has always been the issue of chicken and egg. What do you do first? Must you wait for government to develop, or you pay your taxes first? But like we've been told today, government cannot give what they do not have. Without funding, they will not be able to pay these taxes. I'll just quickly summarize by a few things that we are doing to intervene in this area. We have a lot of e-platform solutions now. We know that the economy worldwide is gone digital. So we have what we call the e-stamping duty. Now you don't have to carry your document before you can stamp them. You do e-stamping. We worked with CAC on this. We have e-filing. Our ITA is operational now. For the last taxpayer, we say you can use the ITAS platform to file your taxes online. We just commenced the e-receipt. That took just about 2-3 days ago. Anybody that has paid taxes in the last 1 week, you get an email from us notifying you that we have received your payment, and we tell you to just click on a particular icon, and you can print out your receipt automatically. That just started. And then we also know that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're also going to launch the ETCC. And with the ETCC, you can sit down also in the comfort of your office or your home, request for your tax clearance certificate, we'll process it and email it to you as well. So these, for us, are some of the things that we are doing by way of intervention. Now, what we'll say in rounding up is that the slogan should be, pay the right amount of taxes at the right time, and then you see things change for us in Nigeria. Like we say in FRS, it pays for you to pay your taxes.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service FIRS calls on all corporate organizations operating in Nigeria to register for the purpose of payment of taxes and obtain a tax identification number TIN. All registered companies must obtain a tax identification number immediately from the nearest FIRS office. You can also collect and return tax registration forms from the Federal Inland Revenue Service Engagement and Enlightenment Tax Teams, FEET, on compliance checks exercise in your area. A company which is yet to commence business after at least 6 months of incorporation must pay a pre-operational levy of 20,000 naira in the first year and 25,000 naira for subsequent years to obtain its tax clearance certificate TCC. Note that filing and payment of VAT and withholding tax returns must be done on or before the 21st day of every month. Register for VAT. File all tax returns as and at when due. Be a responsible corporate citizen of Nigeria. It pays to pay your tax. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Now to excerpts from some of the papers.
Every aspect of governance resonates around taxation. Otherwise, what are we doing with resources? If we must have resources, where are they coming from? And if the greatest bulk of resources for governing purposes doesn't come from taxation, tell me where it comes from. And so, everything about taxation ties itself nicely into governance. Otherwise, whoever governs may just be there as a tribal chief without authority. Number 2, we need continuing tax education. That is important. Number 3, we need attitudinal orientation. And number 4, we must reinforce applicable laws. And number 5, hold the government accountable by asking them to honor the social contract.
What are the principles for withholding tax? The first and major principle of withholding tax, the primary purpose, is anti-evasion. The secondary motive is collection. But we now deify collection as the purpose of withholding tax. It's not better to track the income. Track it. And therefore use a low penetrative rate. So that you'll be able to now bring the entire income to boot. But you want to put the rate at 10%, 20%. You want to maximize collection through withholding tax. Does it help? We're now playing the lazy attitude using withholding tax instrument. If we want to use tax policy properly, there should be no exception. Withholding tax should be a tracking rate, not as a collection device, absolute collection device, but as a tracking rate, so that you can track the transaction and then make sure that all the income comes in. The last point, informal taxation. All those toll gates, Owo governor, Owo Olopa, Owo council chairman, Owo Aboro, all those money we pay. Even these days, I feel ashamed when I pass through our airports. Everybody is begging for money, for no service received. But we travel across West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, nobody ever asks you for anything. Nobody asks you to present toilet roll to you or to come and pour water for you. So it's an all-pervasive phenomenon in Nigeria today. So there's a lot of informal tax that is already going on. And so it is a bug, a tumor we must arrest in Nigeria if we need to seed the wood for the trees as a country.
When a mutually beneficial understanding exists between the taxpayers and the authorities, compliance is achieved effortlessly. For instance, if there's some stakeholders meetings or fora that government really maybe organize to sanitize the populace about the intention to bring certain tax into force, then most likely many people will have trashed some points will have been trashed out at this fora, and that might increase even tax compliance, and more so when proper accountability is ensured. So this can be related to the umpires currently brewing the Federal Inland Revenue Service and manufacturers who woke up presently to receive notices of property valuation and assessment without any prior discussion and explanation to this manufacturer or to those companies. A good tax system must be designed on the basis of an appropriate set of principles, such as equity of fairness and certainty. The most explicable requirement of equity or fairness is to treat equal people in equal circumstances in an equal way. Fair treatment of taxpayers and a culture of mutual understanding between tax authorities and taxpayers improve trust in authorities and enhance compliance. Rather than waking up one day and you see a lot of armed forces with guns, with vehicles, and a number of them who just will come bounce on you at your factory entry when you are supposed to be doing business.
That was Otuba Francis Meshioye, who stood in for the president of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, Dr. Frank Jacobs. Otuba Meshioye's reference to the recent service of property valuation on some land-owning or property-owning corporate bodies in recent time elicited this response from the special advisor to the executive chairman of the FRS, Mr. Abuja.
When the representative of MAN was making his presentations, there were two issues that he raised that is of concern, and we felt we need to address them at the same gathering. MAN is a major stakeholder in the Nigerian tax space. Without them, we can't make headway when it comes to taxation. So when an issue bothers them, we have no choice but to respond. The first one was that he said that we have been sending out notice of property valuation to companies in Lagos State and probably across the nation. And that tends to give the indication or implication that we're trying to levy a new tax called property tax. I've had the one-on-one engagement with him after his presentation, and I did explain to him. He's very satisfied now, but it's not enough for him alone to be satisfied, so that's why I'm making this explanation. Well, there's no new tax law that is called property tax. What FRS is doing is just trying to ensure that we bring tax evaders into the tax net. Information available to us is that companies are registered. They build properties or own properties. Some of them hundreds of millions, some of them billions of million naira, and they have not filed any tax return. We don't have any information on them. And then we said there's no way a company will run and you have money to build such properties and you are not paying taxes at all. And we all know here that the law empowers us that where we could not determine your income, we have the right to assess you on what we call a turnover basis. So what we are therefore done is this, to say, company A, we don't have you in our tax net, but you have a property worth 500 million. So we assume that that 500 million is your turnover. We say that 500 million is your turnover. And then we issue a circular long time ago in FRS that says cost of operation for sorting will be 80%. So we take 20% of that as your deemed profit. And then we apply 30%, which is the corporate tax rate, on that 20%, which comes to net effect of 6% of the value of that property. And for those who are filing their taxes, and we have quite a number of them, let's say, for argument's sake, we pick a company and we wrote to them, but in your tax return, that same property is listed. You probably even be enjoying withholding, capital allowances on it. It's on your schedule. We write to them and say, you have no case to answer. But where we have no record, that is when we insist that you must come back. You have two options. Either you pay the deemed income or you file your return and tell us exactly what your tax liability should be. So there is no new tax in town. There is no property tax. It's still the same company income tax, and we are doing this in accordance with the law. I think it's important for us to clear that. Then the second point he mentioned was that we go about with policemen as well sometime to carry out an enforcement. And our reaction is that enforcement in FRA is never a sudden event. It's never a sudden event. It's usually a result of we corresponding with taxpayer, telling them to pay, serving a notice to them, and they still fail to pay. And we are doing that enforcement also in the exercise of the powers conferred on FRS. It's a last option for us. We know that closing down a business is not in any way good. If they are not in business, we cannot collect taxes. We are very much aware of that. But we know situations whereby we know taxpayers who have the resources to pay, but just simply choose not to pay. So it's going to be an abdication of our responsibility, therefore, if we fail to enforce such company. That is when we do that. It's not a common occurrence. It's a last resort for us in FRS.
The various papers presented at the 19th Annual Tax Conference, which of course centered around the theme of the conference, taxation and good governance, the social contract imperatives, stirred up the old debate, the age-long debate about the chicken and the egg, which comes first. Of course, you get our drift. Paying of taxes or provision of good governance, which comes first? We asked some of the participants. Which comes first? Payment of taxes by the citizenry or provision of good governance?
The Bible says you should give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. It goes both ways, but let me tell you, if you do not perform your duty first, you won't have the moral duty to ask questions.
I think personally that because taxation does not stand for any particular project or any decision, it's better to pay tax first and then demand good governance.
Well, provision of good governance is something you do when you have money, definitely. So which means you can provide if you don't have. In as much as you want to provide everything for your people, for the government, if you don't have the resources, you cannot provide. So therefore, the tax has to come in first, then you provide those services. When the taxes are paid, if those services are not provided, that's when the populace will demand for what they are paid for.
If you have to look for what the government will do for you before paying your tax, where would the government get money to do this infrastructural work for you? You have to pay your tax first before the government will use this money to develop your state or your country.
I will say that the government should perform their civic responsibility to the citizen before taxation.
Join the debate, even as we still have more reactions from more participants to serve you in subsequent episodes of the program. Tweet us, send emails, text us, call us. Which comes first, paying of taxes or provision of amenities? We have so much more to tell you about what transpired at the 19th Annual Task Conference. And so next episode, we'll be bringing you part 2 of our offering on what transpired at the 19th Annual Task Conference. We thank you most sincerely for watching. Keep the flag flying, pay your taxes as and when due, and happy Democracy Day, Nigeria. See you next week.